Hello, everybody. I'm Bennet Tchaikovsky. I'm the accounting professor, and today we're going to be talking about transferring to UCLA as a business economics, as a biz econ major from a California community college. So my disclaimer and copyright notice, the information and opinions in this presentation are those of myself alone and not my employers or any other affiliated organizations, including but not limited to IVC or Irvine Valley College in the South Orange County Community College District. This presentation is for educational purposes only and does not constitute any legal or accounting advice whatsoever. This presentation is copyright 2026 by Bennet Tchaikovsky. All rights are reserved, and any distribution is strictly prohibited. Now, a few different things I want to say. I'm a gaucho, I'm not a Bruin, but I've had a lot of students that have transferred to UCLA. It is an absolutely, from a brand perspective, it is an absolutely amazing school. And many of my students have had great success there, but you have to kind of know what you're getting into. And prior to doing any of this, prior to you transferring, whether it to be UCLA or anywhere else, you have to get involved as a transfer student. And in fact, if you are transferring, your parents won't like me for saying this, give yourself 2 years and a quarter, 2.5 years. You want 2 summers, right? If you're going to USC, hope for a spring admission. So you go from basically spring to fall, you get 2 summers. You got to be on LinkedIn. And we're talking really about accounting, AI usage. You need to know how to use artificial intelligence, how to use Excel. And again, no school is cheap. Got to budget accordingly. And you've got to have your resume ready to go because when you start recruiting, you're going to need to hit the ground running. You want to start trying to recruit recruiters now. And one of the things I will share with you is that UCLA has such a strong brand name, right? It is ranked #1 or #2 in public schools. And by the way, I've kind of noticed this. If you see a riot or a disturbance on the UCLA campus, like in 2024, what ends up happening is they drop in the rankings by one, and then Berkeley takes over. And when Berkeley has a disturbance on campus, then UCLA will take over. I know it happened at least in 2024, but again, I'm sure UCLA will be #1 again. UCLA also has an amazing social life, right? So as long as you're not a biz econ or a science major, there's a great opportunity there for a social life, right? But certain majors will take a lot out of you. Just remember that if you are going as a biz econ major, you just have to kind of remember this. I also had a student who, and this was pre-COVID, he had a 391 GPA from UCLA. And when he was there, he was in the library or watching basketball games, which at the time there was Lonzo Ball. So I kind of get it. It kind of dates me and him. But when he went to UCLA, he didn't recruit. And that's the problem. You're going to be spending so much time studying that you may not have a time for a social life. And here's another kind of just to kind of elaborate on this. So one of my students was involved in Greek life, and she sent me this really great message. I've kind of given it away, but she was working behind the scenes for recruitment. And as a part of that, when you go, it's kind of very much like Meet the Firms. You go through this gauntlet of meeting different people and you say, is it the right fraternity or sorority for me? And what happens is after those potential members leave, they get ranked. And what happens is like the applicants who are majoring in, this is what she said, who are majoring in biz econ or regular economics have gotten a lot of low scores with comments like dry personality or can't hold a conversation or can only talk about academic accomplishments. And the reason why I mention this is that if your goal is to get a job, you have to be social, right? Intelligence is part of it, but you have to know how to work with other people. So make sure you're getting involved, you're taking leadership positions, you're learning how to work with others. I'd say go work for Spirit Airlines and learn how to be a flight attendant, but I think we're too late for that. But you have to basically learn how to de-escalate situations, how to deal with people, how to motivate people. For athletes, this is kind of like a given. That's why a lot of accounting firms love to hire former athletes. I'm not one, but you have to have something happening, right? So again, it's one of these things that you have to be social. So even if you are going to do business economics, you got to be social. Very, very important to do. Now, why does UCLA not have a business school? Well, the UCs generally tend not to believe in accounting or business. They are a research institution. And so with UCLA, they offer business economics. Now, what I will say is that the accounting at UCLA, Ming Liu, he teaches at SMC and teaches intermediate accounting, I believe, at UCLA. He's amazing. Gordon Klein, who is a CPA attorney like yours truly, actually taught me CPA review 30 years ago. And he was absolutely amazing. Gordon is incredible as an instructor. I use his accounting ethics book to this day. UCLA has great instructors for accounting. But again, the UCs, they don't call it business, they're going to call it economics. Now, for you, if you're going to be studying accounting, right, which, I don't care what if you're not going to do accounting, that's fine. Make sure you are looking for a job day one. Okay. And that's really, really important. So by the way, I adopted this because this was so basically so close, right? So basically, just remember that it's like, again, UCLA is extremely difficult to get into. If you're at a community college, there's an assumption you have close to a 4.0. I have known students who have had like 3 sevens don't get into UCLA and they get put on the wait list. And good luck getting off that wait list. I haven't heard anybody doing that successfully, but again, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But again, I'm just kind of sharing with you my opinions. The quarter system is also very stressful. Most of community colleges, with the exception of Foothill, are on the semester system, 16 weeks long, at least at IBC, which will never change. I think we've tried to get it shorten it, but it will never change. But it's extremely, extremely stressful. So what I would kind of go through and tell you is like, you gotta be on it the moment you get in. Now, here's the challenge with getting into UCLA. When you get into UCLA, you are not in the major. And if you watch my video about UC Santa Barbara with Econ and accounting, it's kind of the same thing. But remember, for UCSB, it was Econ 10A and Econ 5. You only need a 285. Here, you need a 3.5 GPA. And if you look at this, right, these classes are absolutely insane. Okay. And you have to remember, because you have to get a certain GPA in order to get in. And if you look at this over here for the major eligibility for transfer students, pre-major GPA of a 3.0. Okay. You're not getting into UCLA with something lower than that. Cumulative UCLA GPA of 3.3. So that's going to at least be a B plus. Minimum GPA in Econ 11 and Econ 101 is a 3.5. Now they say check the back page as an alternative option. Complete Econ 11 and Econ 101 with a minimum 3.5 GPA, or complete Econ 11 and 101 with a 3.3 and a minimum 3.5 GPA in Econ 11, 101, and all economics courses completed at the time of the application only. Only courses that have at least economics 11 as a prerequisite will be considered, at a minimum 3.3 cumulative UCLA GPA. I don't even know, because there's nothing equivalent to Econ 11 in a community college. I don't see how you're getting less than a 3.5. So let's kind of go with that assumption. By the way, I'm going to put this link in the description. But you need to understand is that when you're in these classes, you're competing with the best of the best. It's like Karate Kid. You're going to the All Valley Karate Tournament and you're going up against Cobra Kai. They're going to sweep the leg. They're going to do a lot of stuff to you, but you got to fight it out. Really, really important. Hopefully you got that reference. So Haas UCI, and by the way, I've known people who got into Haas but did not get into UCI for biz admin. That's how competitive things are now at UCI. I know people that got into UCLA but did not get into UCI. Go figure that one out. Okay. But why are those schools maybe a little bit more desirable? Because you're automatically in the major. When you go to UC Santa Barbara or you go to UCLA, you've got to run the gauntlet, right? Now, why are these classes so messed up? Why is Econ 11 and 101, why are they so stressful? 3.5 GPA. And this is, I'm going to say something about academic dishonesty. In my accounting classes, I run the TSA, the Tchaikovsky Screening Agency, right? And I make students, I only allow the use of four-function calculators. I require students to put all their materials to the very, very front of the class, no cell phones. I walk around with an electronic sweeper in my managerial and financial accounting courses. Why do I do that? Because I want to make sure everybody is on the fair footing. Also, when I teach my accounting courses, you're going to get the grade you earn. Everybody deserves an A, everybody's going to get an A. But what you have to remember is at UCLA, not everybody's going to go biz econ. They just don't have the room for it. So they're going to tell their professors, and this also happened to me when I was teaching at Fullerton and also Chapman to a certain extent, you can't go above a 2.6. Most of the time, they want you to come in at a 2.3. Also, what makes these classes really difficult? You are taking economics, right? What you learned at your community college, and you're combining with the second semester of calculus. These are incredibly difficult classes. And, this is when you are in Econ 11, because basically when you take microeconomic theory, and let me just pause real quick. When I come here and I look at Econ 11 as microeconomic theory 1, and it requires a solid background in calculus. So it's taking what you learn in calculus and combining it with economics. Good luck with that one. I don't know how you're doing that one. Yeah, that sounds like a really good time. No, Math 3B, when I'm teaching at Irvine Valley, the courses, whenever I'm trying to find out if a student is stressed out, I go down the list. Are you taking Math 3A? Are you taking Math 3B? Are you taking Writing 2? Sciences, forget about it. You go down that list, and it's like, sure enough, if they're taking those classes, it's an absolute nightmare. So if you are going to be business economics, and I know people, right? One of my great former students, Shani, give her a shout out. She got in and she's now actually working in investment banking, one of the rare of all my students. She's amazing. I'll be working for her someday. She was able to do it, but you got to be on your game. And I have heard from students, and again, because the professors and the TAs there, I don't know how much they're enforcing the cell phones or whatever else. There may be some academic dishonesty. So report it. No one should be cheating in any classes. If you see someone committing academic dishonesty, absolutely report them. It's a violation of the honor code. I don't know how UCLA does it. But again, there's that going on in the class. And again, it's very stressful. And I've had plenty of students who I try to tell these warnings to, and I don't want to say they don't believe me, but they say, oh, it's UCLA. Oh, I got to be a Bruin. Oh, I've been told this from day one. That's fine. But this is really where you're going to have to be beyond your A game. And, the one thing I would say as to this is that what happens ultimately with a lot of my students who, they don't get into biz econ. The easiest major, at least from Irvine Valley, to get into or to transfer into is going to be sociology. Now, the one thing I will share is this. If you are going to be doing accounting, right? The advantage of if you are going to be doing accounting and you are social, right? You can go to UCLA, right? You can go become a sociology major. But then what you do is you go to a place like Irvine Valley or any other local community college, and for $46 a unit, you take your accounting courses. Because in the eyes of the California Board of Accountancy, they accept courses from anywhere. I've got film studies majors. I have students who went to the Rhode Island School of Design in my accounting courses. And sure enough, they are, they're doing it. They're taking all these accounting classes and they're getting ready to sit for the CPA exam. The California Board of Accountancy doesn't really care about that now. What about firms? Well, when you go to a Meet the Firms or an accounting firm event, they can't disqualify you. There's no like, oh, are you busy econ? There's no screening process because you could claim discrimination. So remember, we're in California, right? You can't do that kind of stuff. So what would happen is you would go in, you sign up for the event, give them your resume. I'm saying I'm CPA eligible. Now, if they go through and you ask you different questions, you do not want to be dishonest. If you are going to be dishonest, it's better for you to become an attorney. It's a whole nother discussion. But when you go through and you do this, right, you can still basically go to UCLA. And I know students who were other majors who got into accounting firms because remember, what accounting firms are looking for is not necessarily those that suffered through business economics, but can you deal with clients, right? Are you going to be able to handle client relationships, right? That's what you have to remember. And that's why the social skills are so important. If you don't get involved, it's not going to work out. And that's really the problem. You have to get involved. And that's really basically for any school that you're going to go to. So when you are choosing a school, obviously a school like UCLA or Berkeley will get you in a lot of doors that some other schools will not get you into. But at the same time, if you're not developing yourself socially, what's the point? Because you won't be able to get a job out of going to one of those schools. So again, Econ 11 and 101 are extremely stressful. Now, as community colleges, here's the huge dilemma. One of the things that I do as an accounting 1A and 1B instructor is I am constantly talking with my former students who have transferred on. And I don't do it as much anymore because most of my students do really well. When my students go to UCI, to Paul Mirage, I've talked to their professors. Also, when my students go to Fullerton, I know because I've taught intermediate accounting there, my students do really well. Why is that? Well, I use problem-based testing for my accounting exams. I don't use the McGraw-Hill Connect. I use everything as problem-based. Now, why is that so important for accounting? Well, on the CPA exam, you really have something where it's like, well, half of it is task-based simulations, and then half of it is basically going to be multiple choice. So I'm trying to give my students a huge leg up. I have many students that go to USC. When they go to USC, they don't accept accounting 1A and 1B. They make you take a combination class to make sure that they get more of your money. I'm just kidding. Well, maybe I'm not. That they get more of your money and that they want to basically, excuse me, that they want to make sure your education is complete by giving you that combo course as a transfer student. Now, if you took my classes, you'll be fine. And I continually check in with my students to basically to make sure that that's absolutely the truth. Now, could community colleges come up with something like Econ 11? The answer is possibly. However, you have to remember that when it comes to designing courses, right, like Econ 11, if I went to Assist, and just give me a minute. So this is another link I'm going to leave for you below. This is a program called Assist. And when we're on Assist, what I do here is I say, okay, I am at Irvine Valley College and I want to go through and I want to transfer to University of California at Irvine. Okay, I'm going to choose business administration. And when I do this, it's going to tell me exactly what courses basically matriculate. Like how do my courses go over here? And then I see over here, I got to take accounting 1A, accounting 1B. I got to take econ 10, got to take, these other courses here. So all these different basically required for admission. So I got to kind of go through and then basically essentially go through and take these different courses. Now for UCLA, and this kind of goes to my thoughts on, well, could we create a course? And the answer is, well, this course is never articulated. This course is never articulated. And this is now, I think this is now based on this. This is going to be Econ 101, right? Because this is my checklist. And I think this was done as of I want to say this was done as of 2025, but again, these courses are never articulated. Why are they not articulated? Because they are using them as weeder courses. They require a 3.5, and they want to make sure that when those students get there, that those professors are in charge of the curve because they want to limit admission, right? And again, this is my opinion based on what I have seen, and I feel pretty confident with what I'm going through and sharing with you right now. So because of that, right, as a community college, we can't create an accounting 11. We can't create an econ, we can't create an econ, jumping ahead. We can't create an econ 11 or we can't create an econ 41, but you may be able to create something, a class that wouldn't transfer. And by the way, right there, that's going to put you in a huge problem unless you can basically find a way to get enough students who want to do it. But what you could do is you could get the math department, right? I could call Professor Gupta and say, hey, man, I met you a few times. My name is Adam Gloom. I'm just kidding around. And Adam's a great guy. They've got great people in the econ department. And let's create a combo class to help students get through this stuff and use calculus with economics. But again, if the class doesn't transfer, it may be way too niche and you may not be able to do it. So what does that exactly mean? It basically means that when you go to UCLA as a business economics major, you're going to need it, hit it hard out of the park. What does that mean? You're going to have to get one of the top scores in order to get into the major. That basically means that between those two classes, I can get an A minus and a B plus, 3.7, 3.3, then I get to a 3.5. I could get an A or a B, that gets me to a 3.5. But you have to remember, if the class is being curved to a 2.3, which it usually is, right? Again, my opinion, based on what I've heard from students, that's not good. Okay, so, and again, the they're really trying to limit access into that major. Why do they try to limit access in the major? Because if they don't, probably would become, you get thousands of busy econ majors. So again, but can I be a sociology major? Can I be a history major? Can I be a, communications? Absolutely. And you're probably going to have a much better time. You're probably going to really enjoy yourself. And just remember that if you do end up basically kind of coming over here, and this is, one of my students who went through and did this. I'm going to go ahead and look at sociology. If I come down over here to sociology, what I've heard from students is that this is one of the easier ones to kind of use. So if you're at UCLA and you're not going to be a biz econ major, then this is what you would do. So I would take introductory sociology. I'm already going to have this probably under my belt, right? Basically over here, introductory statistics courses, complete one course from here, and that's all I have to kind of go through and do. So again, I can take Soc 1, I can figure out how to take Stats 10, right? If I do that, complete one course, so I would just have to do Sociology 20, and that actually has to be taken at UCLA. And so that might be my best way to go. And by the way, my student who shared that little story with me, and I'll kind of end on this, during the riots, at the disturbances, the uprisings on the UCLA campus, I was asking her like, well, what happened? She said, well, Bennett, they, we got to write in our journals about the stresses of life that this was causing us. Well, what about the biz econ majors? It's like, no, they had to take their exams. So outside of wherever it was at UCLA, like all those crazy protests during 2024, while my student was a sociology major, like writing in her journal, everybody else, everybody else on campus was taking their exams. Okay, so again, go Bruins, right? I have a lot of, with UCLA, I grew up on the west side of Los Angeles. I spent a lot of time on the UCLA campus. It is an absolutely amazing school. It's an amazing place. But if you are going to be a transfer student as pre-business economics, watch out. And my best of luck to you. Thank you for liking and subscribing to the channel. If there's any other videos you'd like to see, or if you want to leave a comment below, please feel free to reach out. I look forward to seeing you on future videos. Have a great day.